Was it easy leaving the group chat when the bubbles turned green and every message was Cam likes this and Claire dislikes that? Oh, yes, it was, because I get enough overreacting at home.
Like liking messaging again with WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
For 25 years, nothing has tasted better after a hard day's work than a Mike's Hard Lemonade. It's because since day one, Mike's has been making lemonade the hard way. We use 3 kinds of lemons, all hand-picked from family farms, then blended to perfection and cold-pressed to create the epic hard lemonade you know and love. Mike's Hard Lemonade. Hard days deserve a hard lemonade. Mike's is hard, so is prison. Don't drive drunk. Premium malt beverage with flavors. All registered trademarks used under license by Mike's Hard Lemonade Company, Chicago, Illinois.
To get the Crime Writers on Aftershow right now, go to patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And in this episode, it was a water park focused on crazy rides and little concern for safety. And I have the scars to prove it. We'll return to our 2020 review of Class Action Park. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of the These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
So, Kevin, what are we listening to in today's CWO Classic Rewind?
We are going back to September 21st, 2020. Back in those dark days where we were stuck inside looking for great things to watch, and we found it with Class Action Park from HBO Max.
When I first saw this documentary was coming out, I got like a combination of nostalgia and douche chills. Where I was like, I cannot wait to watch it, but I'm also so afraid that I might accidentally be in it, like by mistake.
Oh, no, but you weren't.
I wasn't, thank God. So scary.
All right, well, how about we go and we listen to that review?
All right, let's hear it. Moving on.
It's not really fair to ask the question, what was Action Park? Basic level, you can say it was a water slide park. But in truth, it was so much more than a water slide park.
In 1978, disgraced financier Eugene Mulvihill opened a water park in New Jersey filled with questionably designed rides run by teenagers. The park's young customers freely controlled race cars and motorboats and were catapulted through souped-up water slides like the Cannonball Loop.
And it looked like it was something out of like a Bugs Bunny or a Roadrunner cartoon where they just made a loop and said, yeah, there's our ride.
Some lunatic clearly just was like, build me a slide that's like that. And then they didn't consult anybody who had a background in engineering.
Bruised and scraped visitors to Action Park were regularly subjected to burning hot asphalt, rides with few safety measures, and a general sense of jeopardy that no insurance company would cover.
Action Park was the chaos summer park with very little oversight, too much alcohol, whistles blowing, people screaming, motors running. It was an energy.
Through the eyes of former staff, visitors, and comedians, HBO Max's Class Action Park chronicles the legend of this attraction where visitors were injured every day and even drowned or were electrocuted. But this raucous tale pivots when we learn more about Mulvihill's unethical practices and meet the family of a young guest who was killed when thrown from a ride. We're going to be giving spoilers for Class Action Park, so if you don't want to hear them, go to the estimated time code in our show notes to hear our thumbs up or thumbs down review. Now, can I just start this, which I never normally do?
Yeah.
I am an adult survivor of Action Park.
It's very brave of you to say.
I just want to tell you guys, I am a survivor. I have the ribbon. I take it out once a year. So Action Park, as you see in this documentary, I can personally tell you, was bananas, scary, and I almost died there. And my prepubescent boobs got squished there to the point where I didn't think they were ever going to grow again.
What happened?
Oh, my God.
Two things happened that I remember very clearly. My weekend dad, because my parents were divorced, so I had like a very typical weekend dad who on the weekends when he'd have us would take us to like amusement parks and stuff. Mm-hmm. We'd go to a place called Great Adventure, which was a Six Flags park all the time in New Jersey. And one summer, just to like switch it up, one weekend we went to Action Park, and I think like he thought, hey, this is just like Great Adventure, except it's a water park. No. So Great Adventure had a Rapids ride, right? And Action Park had the Colorado Rapids ride, which, you know, I guess he, the adult, thought would be the same. And we got in, and I just very clearly remember being in a tube by myself at like maybe 10 years old, up against a rock, unable to extricate myself from the like 20 teenagers that were just like also stuck against the rock around me that had like smushed me up against the rock. I remember just like screaming and crying and like thinking I was going to die. And then I also remember riding that triple bump water slide with like you like basically get on a towel and ride down the thing.
Hey, was that the kamikaze?
And you fly off of it, like one of the bumps, and you just like slam onto your belly. And I just remember very strongly the feeling of my tiny little prepubescent boobs being like shoved through my back. It was horrible.
They recovered.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
Rebecca.
Laura Bricker, can you believe this place was real? Because it was.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I can't even believe that this was real. And I think that's the point of all of this. It's like, I feel like I'm watching that show Jackass on MTV. Like when I watch this, I'm like, how did this happen? But I think it's the 80s. And granted, I grew up in the middle of nowhere and we didn't have anything like this around us. We just had the whale's tail, and like nothing like this happened at the whale's tail. So I think it's just the point of a different time, a different generation. But even by those standards, this is pretty freaking nuts.
Well, it's funny, Kevin, earlier tonight, our producer and my son, Henry, was saying that like he couldn't imagine a childhood where like this would exist and he'd be allowed to go. But then I was like, wait a minute, you go down to like the river in town and swing on a like hoopty rope swing that somebody hung there. And like that's
God made that though, not
well, that was
Eugene
Henry's point,
Mulvihill.
was that like that wasn't hung by an adult who was charging tickets. That's actually just teenage danger.
Are there a bunch of guys like screaming that he's a pussy and stuff?
Pussy!
You'd like hit the back of your head on the water. No lifeguard would jump in to help you. The water's ice cold. You come up for air, you're all shell shocked, you're probably concussed, and you have like 150 people from New Jersey just being like, pussy! You fucking bitch! You fucking wiped out pussy! And that's like when it's at its classiest.
So can you imagine this place actually existed, Kevin?
The idea that this place existed at all, half of the humor is from all of these people telling their stories. And part of it is the idea that we know that this was ridiculous that this existed, that people allow this to go on, that it's so incredibly out there. That's what makes it funny, to the absurdness of it all. I did like
Chris
Gethard. And when he was talking about the Tarzan swing and being dumped into like ice cold water.
Oh, yeah. It was like 40 degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we just talk about that for a second? Toby, you know, it is hard to hang on something and hold your own body weight, right? That's like the thing that some people just can't do.
Right.
There are a tremendous number of rides at Action Park that rely on the guests being swung over something incredibly dangerous.
Rebecca, you control the action.
While only holding on by themselves to their own body weight and hanging. Toby, did you ever go to a place like this when you were a kid, or would your parents have let you do so?
No. I mean, we weren't like an amusement park family, certainly. And one of the things that this whole thing had me thinking about was just, I think there was a little more independence in the 80s for kids.
Yes.
Like I remember, like we used to take an aluminum boat, you know, just like a little aluminum boat with a 15 horsepower engine from where we were on the island to this place, Weir's Beach, which had all these arcades and stuff. But it's a long, you know, it was like a 20-minute drive in the boat on like a lake at night. And I can't imagine letting my kids do that. But my parents, it just didn't never seem like there was much of a question about us doing it. It's lunacy, but at the same time, it just seems super 80s.
Yeah.
And it doesn't surprise me in its lunacy. I mean, it seems like it's the nth degree of something that was sort of pervasive in the culture.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I think too, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about Eugene Mulvihill was he came from this like junk bond trading where like nothing had any meaning and everything was just sort of empty and you were just making money and like it was all like a shell, right? Mm-hmm. And so was the business, you know, structure of Action Park. Laura, I mean, he made up a fake insurance company that was insuring his real water park. but he wasn't insured. I mean, he just made up a fake insurance company. And then he would do this thing where he just, use the tactic, which works to this day. You hear people doing this, just making people who had complaints go to court. Like he would take each and every case to the ends. People sort of stopped having these complaints. But the fake insurance company, the relentless flouting of environmental and zoning regulations just because he could and did, he is a con man that I think, unlike the thing we just reviewed, there's just more to it, right? Like in terms of the consequences and the scope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, Traction Park, that people were getting hurt left and right just because he was, doing this tap dance and all these smoke and mirrors to dissuade people from moving on. He was good at that. There was two sides to this, and I don't feel like they really quite went together. We had the side of this kind of off the charts 80s throwback to crazy teenage times. And then you have this legitimate side where people are getting hurt. This guy's totally getting away with this. He's got the fake insurance and he's not really being held accountable. He is, but he isn't. The freaking cattle prod. What was that?
That was an awesome story.
If they complain, we're just going to zap them with a cattle prod?
We're going to pretend.
Somebody standing in a puddle? What could go wrong?
Oh, my God.
Kevin, what did you think of the fact that this park owner interfered with the ride design process and basically designed a lot of these rides himself?
Well, that's sort of where this park starts to go wrong, right? It's just somebody doesn't have any idea about engineering, decides he's going to make this loop-de-loop water slide.
Yep.
And yeah, part of it is, I don't want to use the word sociopath. It's thrown around too much, and I don't think that's what he is. But
I do.
He seems to have a real lack of care for other people in this sense that people were getting hurt. He liked the idea that, the rides were crazy and he was going to make them more and more nuts. And the whole story about the first rides of the Cannonball Loop are nuts.
The first couple people that came out and their mouths were all bloody. And that was before they had put sufficient padding in the top. There was a little bit. So they sent a couple other people down. And when those people came down, they came down with lacerations. They couldn't figure out why these people had lacerations from a giant loop. But then they took the loop apart and they found teeth stuck in the padding from the first couple people that went down the slide and they had gotten their teeth knocked out. And these other people were just going up and ripping into it.
They do sort of play that for laughs. The stories about the motorboats and how people would just crash into each other on purpose. And there's oil spills and snakes in the the moats with the motorboats right next to the bar, by the way. That was right in the Motor City area. I remember the first time I rode an alpine slide here in New England. I was like, wow, the sides on this alpine slide are really high. And I thought that because the only other alpine slide I'd ridden was at Action Park, which had no sides. They were basically daring you to fly
control
off.
the action.
I know, which did happen. And that sort of takes us to the other part of this documentary. The first half of the documentary is very much played for laughs and nostalgia. We have all this fun animation of the amusement park map that's used to sort of illustrate, different aspects of the park. But then the second part of the documentary takes a turn where we hear about a family whose son died in Action Park because of an injury sustained on that very alpine slide.
I was thinking I couldn't live with that kind of pain. It just hurt so much. And here, 39 years later, I can still feel that pain.
Toby, what did you think of the shift of the tone of this documentary?
Well, I think that's the big question about this documentary, is that shift. And can you go from this sort of zaniness to genuine tragedy? And then this sort of pathological refusal to make any accommodations to prevent them in the future. I really liked the documentary, but I can't think of another thing that we've reviewed that asks you to make such a change in sort of tone of what you're watching. It then doesn't really do much to resolve the two things, I would say.
Yeah.
There's no at the end trying to draw some conclusion about how you can have these two different things going on in the same story. So yeah, I kind of felt like it was unresolved, and it was a little strange. The former employees were definitely wow, that was kind of fucked up, and this was kind of crazy, and looking back on it and all this stuff. But there didn't seem to be anybody who was like, oh shit, we killed people.
Right.
Like, even if they weren't personally responsible, like, I just think if I'd worked at a place like that, I mean, this is an amusement park. It's got no value other than people having fun. And if I was working at a place like that and multiple people died, I feel like that would be like the main thing that I would remember and want to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, is how wrenching that was. But unless I'm forgetting something, I don't think anybody talked about that at all.
But that has a lot to do with the fact that they basically chose comedians to do the exposition of the action park part
as
of
a
it.
guest. Yeah, along with former staffers.
We didn't have...
There was a former lifeguard who said she heard about that and said, that was like, well, that wasn't my department, my division, so I didn't care about it.
I think you can separate yourself from it because I didn't work in that department. I thought that's somebody else's responsibility. But it was a common occurrence. I don't know how many people died at Action Park, but it wasn't just one person.
Yeah, and as Chris Gethard said, nobody should be the second person to die in the wave pool.
The fact that more than one person died in your wave pool, who's that second son of a bitch? That's who your heart really bleeds for. Nobody should ever be the second person to die in a wave pool. You know why? Because after the first person dies in a wave pool, close the fucking wave pool.
After the first one died.
Right, but this guy didn't even die in the wave pool. He died on the alpine slide. So obviously there were multiple deaths. There was at least more than 3. What did you think of the shifting tone, Kevin?
Well, I mean, I think very much like the alpine slide, the documentarians failed to negotiate this curve. This is like my one big knock on this is that, it was a very difficult shift. And especially, it's really only the last 25 minutes, right? So 2/3 of this is this, meatballs story about teenagers running a water park with rides that, were banging up people. And the only thing they could do is spray Binaca on them or some kind of crazy shit.
Oh my God. The medical hut story.
Yeah. And then they had 2 ambulances they had by themselves. Oh my God. Oh, that guy who, was in traction. And then we get to Esther Larson and her story, and it's very sad. And I couldn't quite put my finger what was sort of wrong with that, but the transition to it was just a little too abrupt. And Toby's right, that tension doesn't get resolved.
Yeah, I didn't know how to feel. How about you, Laura? Did you know how to feel with the turn this documentary took?
No, because the first part, I mean, the animation and everything, I just felt like gave it such a wacky tone. Like it felt a little bit, remember that movie Better Off Dead? I mean, that had some animation in it too. Yeah. And so I felt like I was watching something like that. And then I don't know how you could shift the tone, because when people are going back on that nostalgia of what this place was like, I mean, it's like the war stories. Like we all have these stories, when not for me to this degree, but when you look back at high school, things that you're like, I can't believe I'm still alive. And then unfortunately, there's some people that aren't. But that transition was just, it was hard. And I felt like, and then it ended sort of abruptly. We just see this poor family out by the grave, and there you go.
Yeah.
Like they did in the Last Dance, which was the Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls thing.
So good.
Where at some points they'd take out an iPad and make people watch things other people said.
Yes, that was so good.
I think if they did something like that with all these people who've been laughing at this experience all this time, and at the end showed them that and made them respond, because nobody responds, and it's left to the audience to respond.
It's left to us, and you don't know how to feel. Yeah.
Right, and you're like, gosh, I was just laughing at this nuttiness.
Right.
I thought it was funny that people would swing off the Tarzan swing and then show their dick and balls on the way down. It's like, that's funny. And a lot of the stuff is objectively funny, but it's also objectively tragic.
Yeah, and you're right. We're not guided through.
Yeah.
And it's okay to not know how to feel, but it's not only that I didn't know how to feel, I actually felt bad about not knowing how to feel in a way that wasn't challenging. It was just weird.
Yeah.
Toby, I have one final question for you. Imagine living in a quiet rural town in the beautiful mountains of New Jersey, which, by the way, there are parts of New Jersey that are very beautiful. A lot of people don't know that, but it is called the Garden State, and much of New Jersey is farmland and much of it is mountainous, and it's quite beautiful when you get away from the parts that aren't. What do you think about living in this little rural place, and all of a sudden there's a Playboy Club and then this thing, Action Park? What do you think about that? Is it a zoning problem?
Yeah, well, it must have felt nuts for people who lived there for very long. We lived down in southern Jersey in the late 70s, right outside Atlantic City. And then when the casinos came, we left before they really hit. But it was about to undergo a transformation on like a bigger scale. But yeah, I mean, it's got to change just the nature of your environment.
Yeah.
And especially they talk about these young, teenage guys showing up basically just like looking for trouble.
Yep.
And so suddenly you go from having this, I guess, quiet town to drunk teenagers, wandering around with their short shorts and no shirts and big high tops looking to cause some mayhem.
Kevin, who's our next wonderful sponsor for this podcast?
We're brought to you by Quince.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, whenever you're gearing up for your next trip, deciding what to pack is always so stressful, and the clothes that you have either don't fit or they're worn out and they just don't match, and you need to be refreshed because when you go on vacation, you want to feel great, so say hello to Quince.
Seriously, say hello to Quince.
Your new go-to for high-quality vacation essentials that you'll be packing for trips to come. Rebecca, you actually just surprised me with a nice seasonal accoutrement.
Kevin, the linen stuff at Quince is incredible.
Yeah.
I've bought myself a couple of linen shirts, like the camp style linen shirts, and I tie them at the waist and wear them all the time. We were just on a car trip and I was like, Kevin, I wear this black one all the time. I think I should get another one in a different color. Did it right then, and I ordered one for you, and you love it, do you not?
I do. I love my linen jacket that you purchased for me, so I look like you should go on a yacht. I don't know anybody with a yacht, but I really want to go on a yacht just so that I can
yes.
wear that. Yeah, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes.
Pack your bags with high-quality essentials with Quince. Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com. That's QUINCE.com/crime. Get free shipping and 365-day-a-year returns. Quince.com/crime.
Crime.
So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor for this program?
We're brought to you by Shopify.
Ooh.
So, Rebecca, okay, so I don't think I've ever asked you this. So we'll do a quick podcast crossover. Rebecca, who is your favorite Law and Order detective team?
Favorite Law and Order detective team?
Briscoe and Green.
Yeah, I would also go, I'd go Briscoe and Curtis.
Ooh.
Yeah, because they are partners who get things done, right? They're able to solve the case, except, of course, the time when they arrest the wrong guy and it's McCoy who's got to bail him out. That's a whole other problem with the justice system, but we'll get to that later. We've got great partners, though, with you and Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, from the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to did we just hit 1 million orders stage?
Of the two of us, I am the online shopper, yes or no?
You are.
Shopify, I know the interface. As a shopper, super easy to use. If you are selling stuff online, get Shopify. It's just like a click and you are out of there.
Nothing worse than like putting something in the cart to check out, and it's a whole technical mess, and you just walk away.
Gotta go get my wallet. Gotta go. No, Shopify, man. Shopify.
You lose that sale. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/crimewriters.
Crime Writers.
All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/crimewriters.
Crime Writers.
Now, to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/crimewriters.
Writers. All right. Well, I think we should do what we do. Let's let our listeners know. Should they check out Class Action Park? It's a pretty short documentary, about an hour and a half long. It's available now on HBO Max. I think it might come to regular HBO at some point, but check out your HBO Max app. If you're an HBO subscriber, you can watch it there. Laura Bricker, what do you think?
Get the free trial if you don't. Yeah.
Thumbs up or thumbs down for Class Action Park?
I'm going thumbs up just because it was so unusual. It was something that I hadn't heard anything about. Unlike you, Rebecca, I had never heard of this place. And I was just mesmerized watching that first half of it, that all of this went on the way it did. So, I mean, it was short. It was like an hour and a half. You know what? We've got a lot of pandemic left. This was definitely something that was unique and interesting. And I would say give it a watch.
Toby Ball, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Class Action Park?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a thumbs up because the first 2/3 of it is wildly entertaining. And then the last third of it is sort of like the real consequences. And then this sort of bizarre fizzle out at the end where they kind of talk about how it changed hands and what it is now. And then you see the last little bit of the tragic aspect of things. So I just feel like it's at its best, it's really good, but it's more obviously flawed than a lot of stuff that we do. And I think Kevin had a good suggestion for how you address that. But how do you reconcile the fact that, you're kind of celebrating this lost time when teenagers could run this insanely dangerous park and people could show up and be rowdy, and most people had a good time and a lot of people got a little dinged up, but then a few people got killed. And the way it kind of comes off in this is, well, that 100% sucked for them and it's a tragedy. But at the same time, all these other people were having a great time, and look at this colorful guy who was running it. And so it's a little strange, but I'll give it a thumbs up.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, I'm also going thumbs up. It is terribly entertaining. I'm kind of reminded a little bit of Tiger King in the sense that it has some moral flaws, the way it's put together, but it is incredibly entertaining. And I think the animation, too, is fantastic. It's very sort of Schoolhouse Rock, minimalist, but they just capture the examples of weightlessness and defying gravity in a way that is so funny. Yet all the tales are just unbelievable about the things that happened and the way people were getting hurt and the idea that nobody was ever going to do anything to change that. And, you could also just die and that wouldn't change anything. We're just going to keep the wave pool open. We're just going to spray you down with some antiseptic, when half the skin comes off your thigh, and you're supposed to have battle scars and things like that from going to Action Park. And in the end, it makes you feel bad for laughing. So going into it, you say, well, we're going to do this and it's going to be a funny look. It's very hard to balance that. So very good. You'll enjoy it. You'll talk about it, and then you'll feel bad for laughing about it.
Yeah, I'm giving a thumbs up too. I can't say it any better than you guys did. I felt bad. I felt good. It was entertaining. And then I felt weird. Very, very flawed, but still quite good and worth watching, I think. How about that? Isn't that weird? Very, very flawed, but still worth watching. That's Class Action Park, man.
I think you just described our Facebook Watch show.
Well, that was fun.
So you really went to that park, huh?
I did as a kid, yeah. When my dad used to take us there, I was a child of divorce, So on the weekends, my dad, who didn't really pay much attention to us.
Anyway, yeah.
The rest of our lives, he didn't know who my friends were, he didn't know what my grades were. But on the weekends, he'd take us to the Carousel or Great Adventure, which was our Six Flags park, or Action Park, or the Bronx Zoo, or whatever. Action Park was in the rotation, and my poor little boobies got smushed.
Man, that's something.
Yep.
That's something. Did we ever bring kids to something?
Whale's Tail.
Whale's Tail. Yeah, that was a water park.
Yeah. I took your daughter to Disney when she graduated college.
Yeah, that's not dangerous though.
No. Oh, did something oh no, they did that shit themselves. Remember Henry, and when he was in high school, he used to go down with his friends to the rope swing over the rocks in the river.
True. That's true.
We didn't even know. We found out later. Be like, oh, that's how you're going to die. Awesome.
Oh man.
Awesome. All right, Kevin, does that do it for us?
It does.
Well, this show was recorded in Studio C, the Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, which, like the Cannonball Loop, has an escape hatch in case anyone gets stuck. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Partners in Crime Media. When Tillamook ice cream beckons you to the freezer aisle, which irresistibly creamy flavor do you choose? While you're thinking, try not to fog up the glass. Tillamook ice cream. Extraordinary dairy.